that up. Tech-focused accelerator programs. So how many of you in the room have heard of Future Founders, or NIFTY? So a few people. So for those of you that haven't, NIFTY stands for the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurs, and Future Founders is a local Chicago organization through the CEC, Chicago Entrepreneurial Center, that actually partnered with NIFTY to do entrepreneurship training to high schools, particularly like in underserved areas, high schools in underserved areas. So I've actually been a volunteer and mentor with NIFTY for the past 7 years. So this idea was not mine. It came out of another group in the council, but I'm really glad that it did, because I think what this is going to do is basically allow students to have an opportunity at a very, very early stage to not only come up with business ideas, but the change that we're proposing is that those business ideas be more related to technology. So what I've learned in the past few years with these programs is that kids will come up with ideas, but they'll be, it's a barbershop. I've actually started a barbershop before. Or it'll be, roller skating rink or dance parties where they sell jewelry. But what's missing a lot of the time are, building web apps or mobile apps and websites and software and even hardware that's empowered with software. And it's this huge gap, because all of these kids have exposure to technology. They use apps every day. They consume it, but they don't know how to create it. So one of the most disruptive things I think we can do is not only provide the students with the computer science curriculum so they become programmers, but also just open their minds to how they could be creative and solve problems for themselves through software, and especially problems through the city. So the way it relates to the OpenGov is that we have all this open data now with the city, and we have all these opportunities to come up with new apps and ideas to make Chicago better, or make living in Chicago better. So one example of this in action is we actually, my school, we partnered with NIFTY to do a week-long workshop with them, which is an example we shared in the council. And all we did, these kids had no exposure to technology, no programming background, nothing. We taught them in, I don't know, a matter of 2 or 3 hours how to wireframe basic user interface for iPhone apps. Just to do basic wireframing. This is at the beginning of the week. This is on a Tuesday. That Friday, I was a judge for the business plan competition where these kids went through and came up with ideas. There were 6 teams of 4 to 5 students, and they had fully sketched up, mocked up interfaces for apps that they envisioned that they could build. Some of them were apps to, prevent bullying in their schools. Other ones were for them to, map out a safe, path to get home using some of the crime statistics. Another one was the student was going on college tours, so they wanted a better way to map, what places they wanted to check out on campus. Anyway, that's just one example of how important it could be and how simple it could be to get students involved in technology in Chicago through entrepreneurship. All right. Tech video campaign. So how many of you all saw the video by code.org? Code.org? Anybody? A few people? So they had all these celebrities like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. You can check it out on code.org. But it was basically this really viral kind of video that got a lot of people buzzing about, wow, people are starting to learn to code. This is becoming really important. And what we want to do in Chicago is kind of a bigger version of that that's more localized and more specialized towards a lot of the interesting and amazing stories that we have coming out of the city, and highlight technology as an enabler to kids. Because one of the biggest things that we think we could do is just show people, people that have done this. And if you expose them to people in their shoes, people that look like them, people from the same places and neighborhoods that they've been living in, and to show those examples, we think it can be really powerful and inspire people to want to be those things. Because in addition to surveying lots of executives and people, some of our council members actually talk to students. And a lot of these students just tell us they don't know anyone that's in this field. They don't know anyone in technology. They didn't grow up with people that had that type of background. So what we need to do is expose them to those stories and examples to empower them to dream and to think that that's possible. So, all right, so tech building block training. So the other part is we want to open source a curriculum. So we want to provide kind of this openly available more material that would actually allow anyone to take action on this in Chicago. So what you could do is basically, we're going to put together these workshops that you would be able to kind of implement, whether it's at a local library, in a school, an after-school program, or even on your own at a community club or something like that. And there's a lot of action happening in this space. There's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of content, but it's fairly disorganized. So if in Chicago we could come to agreement on what we think would be most valuable to train our kids in our schools, and if we come up with that consistent curriculum and that information, we think it'll here to enable tech diversity. All right, so Gabe's going to take it up next, but I want to start off. I think we have some council members here. So the first thing I'd love to do is if the council members could please stand up, and if we could please give them a round of applause for their work. Please.
So I think the main point here is Neil's highlighted a handful of the many ideas that were suggested. Some of these are in the tech plan. Some of them didn't make it in. There's an internal document as well. But I think the punchline is the following. To have a kind of a geek city, it's not going to be because there's 15 programs identified in a tech plan that comes out of the mayor's office, as important as that will be as a kind of touchstone or beacon. I think it's because there's this kind of enthusiasm and this kind of interest. And so I think, one, I want to thank Dan O'Neill for hosting the meetup and Chris for giving us a way to stay in touch. Two, to really emphasize that some of you probably have programs and activities happening that never even made it up because the city is so big, and we want to keep knowing about those. I think the third thing is this is an ongoing conversation, and so when the tech plan comes out, that's another opportunity to keep the conversation going. We were excited to have a chance to highlight some of what we learned through the process and some of what have been identified as key activities. But we'd really like to open up for questions. And also council members, please be ready as we give you the questions.
Yeah, we may do that. But one thing I wanted to say, just to build off what Gabe said, is this next steps part. Just to show you, I didn't understand. Like, I'd never been a part of a council for a city before. I've been in Chicago my whole life, so what other city would I be on a council for? But anyway, I didn't know what was going to happen and how this was going to go. So when we started, we moved fast. Like, I think Sharon said after our first meeting, it was like one of the most productive kind of government councils she's ever been on. And that was cool because we got all this stuff done so quickly. But the challenge was that we realized that there was this larger thing that we had to be a part of. So it took a while. It took a while for us to get this in and get this done. And just getting it on paper and getting the ideas there is valuable, but like I said, the real work is coming up. So if there's any ideas out here that stand out to you, or if there's something you want to be a part of, if you have an entrepreneurial mindset and you think you could actually just take action on now, please do so. Like, part of this is to inspire people. The covenant through the plan is for the city to really put resources behind these things being put into action, but don't let that stop you. It hasn't stopped me, I'll tell you that. So